That was Sharon's. Oh, that was beautiful. And it's perfect for my talk today. So, but before I get into that, all March, all this month, we've been focused on forgiveness. And so this is our last Sunday with this affirmation on forgiveness. So if you will join me and let us affirm this together. Love and forgiveness open my life to highest good. As I let go of blame, I set myself free. Now you know Reverend Anna likes those hand motions and those body movements, so we'll get going with that as well. So let's do it again. Love and forgiveness open my life to the highest good. As I let go of blame, I set myself free. Wonderful. Wonderful. I like that, but I want to see all of you doing it. All right, so we say it the third time to ground ourselves, and we say it because these are truths. All right, one more time. Love and forgiveness open my life to the highest good. As I let go of blame, I set myself free. Wonderful. Now, turn to your neighbor and share that with them using you instead. We're all feeling a little free. I can hear it. We're all buzzing this morning. Well, that's good. That's good. So I want to start it this morning off with the story. It's the tale of the cracked pot. There once were these two pots. One was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water, but the other pot had become cracked. And at the end of the long walk from the stream to the house, the cracked pot arrived only half full. For a full 2 years, this went on daily, with the old woman bringing home only 1.5 pots of water. Well, of course, the perfect pot was quite proud of its accomplishments. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it could only do half of what it felt it was made to do. So after 2 years of what seemed to be bitter failure, it asked the woman one day by the stream, I am ashamed of myself because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to the house. Well, the old woman smiled. And as she stood up and headed back down the path, she said, did you notice that there are flowers on your side of the path and not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known that you've had this opening. So I planted flower seeds along your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you water the flowers. And so for 2 years, I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers and decorate my table. Without you being just the way you are, there would not be this beauty to grace my path and my home. So, forgiveness. Charles Fillmore says in The Revealing Word that forgiveness is a process of giving up the false for the true. That true forgiveness is transforming our thoughts through renewing the mind, and the body with these thoughts and words of truth. So this is renewing our mind and our body. So that may beg us to ask the question, well, how does God forgive? That's a good question. Eric Butterworth, who's a Unity minister, he was actually a legendary Unity minister and considered a spiritual icon in the Unity movement. And in his book, Discover the Power Within You, in the chapter titled, How God Forgives, he states, God does not really forgive. God cannot forgive. Yes, I know. God cannot forgive sin, no matter what the offense, no matter how great the guilt, because God is principle. God is love. God is love, even if I am filled with hate and anger and bitterness, God is still love. He likens it, Butterworth likens it to electricity. Can electricity stop being electricity? Can light stop being light? Light is here when we open the window. No matter the reason we may have closed it, all we have to do is open it. Electricity is here at the flick of the switch. God forever sees you as her beloved child, with whom she is well pleased. So what does that mean for us in our forgiveness work? Yeah, that means we've got work that we've got to do to let go, doesn't it? So it means we must let go of that story that we attach to ourselves that keeps us in those emotions of shame or blame, that keeps us tied to the perception of ourselves that we are like that cracked pot, imperfect and less than. But we can't come to a place of forgiveness at the same level that those emotions were created, can we? But that's kind of what we do, don't we? Something triggers us, and we're in those same emotions. We're in those same feelings. And we hang on to them, don't we? Oh, yes, for days, weeks. But for some of us, we've hung on to them for years and years. And so we talk about the concept of forgiveness. It's in all of our studies. As truth students, it's in our studies. We praise it, but have we really forgiven? We learn there's little things that come up all the time, don't we? And sometimes the little annoying things, those are easy to forgive. The guy that cut you off in traffic, well, maybe not so much, but we work on it, don't we? The little snide remark from a loved one, the mistakes that we make in our daily living. Those are easy to forgive, and we must forgive them, and we must do that every day. We must keep that practice. But how do we forgive the seemingly unforgivable? The betrayals, the wrongs, the deep hurts, and yes, even the evil done by others. So rewriting is a form of forgiveness and healing. Through restructuring our thoughts, changing our perception of our stories, we start to neutralize that pain, and we start to neutralize those emotions that have come up. We rewrite by letting go of blame and shame and guilt. Rewriting is seeing from a higher consciousness. So how do we rewrite, if I can talk, how do we rewrite our story? Well, the scriptures tell us how. In Romans 12:2, we read, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. In George Lamsa's Bible, in the Aramaic translation, it says, do not imitate this world. So that means that we don't stay trapped in the same story. And we don't use someone else's story of us to keep us in those feelings of blame or shame. We're guided through Scripture to see those old stories that we hold on to differently. We reframe it from a higher consciousness, the same consciousness that Jesus Christ had. We see it through the eyes of love. We see it through the eyes of God. Lewis Smedes, who was a Christian author and theology teacher, says this, and this is powerful, but let me get a little water before I... He says, forgiven does not erase the bitter past. A healed memory is not a deleted memory. Instead, forgiven what we cannot forget creates a new way to remember. We change the memory of our past into a hope for our future. Did you hear that? We change it into a hope for our future because we can't change the past. We can't change past events, only our story about it. And we do not deny that bad things happen, but we can deny that it holds any power over us. Edwin Gaines, in her book, The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, speaks to forgiveness as one of our spiritual laws. And I want to relate a story that she tells about herself in the section titled Reframing the Story. Now, many of you know Edwin Gaines. Love her. If you're not familiar with her story, and she has many stories, from the time she was 4 months old until she was 4 years old, she was sexually abused so bad she almost died. And so she held on to the effects of that for years and years. And it affected everything about her life. And she states that she played the victim role well and retold her story often. But she recounts the day that one of her spiritual teachers abruptly called her on her act. Yes. And she says, as I once again began my tale of woe, he says, listen to it. This victim stuff has gone on long enough. It's really a drag, and it's boring the tears out of the rest of us. Well, can you imagine? She was not getting that poor baby response, that sympathy from him that she'd gotten before. She was kind of reeling from this, but he continued and says, in order to heal this childhood trauma, what you've got to do is create a new story about it. And so he says, okay, here's your new story. Try this one on and see if it works for you. And so he tells her that you have learned what it feels like when power is misused, and it is horrible. Therefore, it is now safe for you to be a woman of power in the world because you know now that you would never misuse nor abuse this power. And in this process, you have gained the more valuable of all spiritual gifts, the understanding heart. Now, how many of you have been to a workshop or been to a Sunday talk by Edwin Gaines? Isn't she wonderful? And the first thing she does, this is how she introduces herself. I am Edwin Gaines, and I am a woman of power. Absolutely. This didn't happen overnight for her. She slowly, it took time, but she embraced the new story about herself. So forgiveness isn't always easy, and it doesn't always happen overnight. And we don't forgive to pardon or condone bad things. Forgiveness is about shifting out of our human tendency to wallow in our victim state so that our minds are clear enough to come to realize who we truly are. We do it for ourselves, as Sharon Song says. We do it to set ourselves free. And we do it every day. So like the cracked pot who lived for years in its identity as being less than because it perceived its brokenness, it saw only that it could give a half measure. But the truth is, we are not broken. And when we see through God's eyes, through love like the old woman, we rewrite our story. For it was not a crack in the pot at all, but an opening in which its splendor poured out and created beauty for all along the path. That is forgiveness. And so, to all you crackpots out there, rewrite your story and pour out your splendor. Thank you.
Well, people search for glory a million different ways in their solitary faces, working at it hard each day. But if they'd stop and take the time to question why they care, they might just start to find there's still room for sharing. It's like we go around in circles when there's no love in our lives. Just an empty game we're playing. All we do is mark the time. And if we get our name in the papers and make a lot of money, have we satisfied our hunger in the search for glory? You know that the only glory is to love and be loved. It's the ageless story our dreams are all made of. And we all need someone to share in this great prize. You know the only glory. It's to love and be loved. It's to love and be loved. To love and be loved. And we're all driven by desire for something in our lives it's too